then it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Friday, January 8th, 2021, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. And I'm telling you, given the events of this week, it's got to be 7:10. Hell, it's got to be 11:30. Put them both together, because it's been a hell of a week. If you are a patriotic American like me, it's been a lot to have to digest. Welcome to the show. We are going to get to that. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about marijuana. This is primarily a marijuana show, so rest assured we'll get to that. But boy, I tell you, after watching an insurrectionist coup go down at the United States Capitol, watching it live, I had, computer streams on, I had the TV going, I was, refreshing Twitter regularly to see whether or not we would still be a democracy by the time my show comes on Friday. We still are for now, as Ben Franklin said to the woman, we've got a republic so far. If we can keep it, let's see if we can keep it. We're going to talk about that coming up in the Radical Rant, a special early Radical Rant about this failed coup by the President of the United States. Hard to imagine I'm having to say that. But also coming up on the show, we're going to start things off with our Cannabis Headline News Week. This is the new segment I've debuted here for 2021. Now that I'm doing just a weekly podcast, there's a lot of the news that I do on the daily newscast that I do that gets lost. So we've put together the best stories from the week in cannabis so that you can think of something other than a failed coup in the United States. You can check that out coming up next, right after our first break here, the Cannabis Headline News Week. Then we'll talk about the failed coup and take a look at some consequences, at least happening for some of the little people, the keyboard commandos who joined in, who are losing their jobs and finding themselves arrested. Numbers that include cops and military and firefighters and elected officials who were arrested just earlier this afternoon. And I'm going to also focus on one that's near to my neck of the woods in Boise, Idaho. We got a guy, famous picture. You saw the picture. If you've been following anything about these riots, then you've been following how this has gone down. There was a picture of this young man who was dangling off of the balcony of the United States House. He's from Boise, Idaho, and now the stories, all these humanizing stories are coming up to try to bail these guys out and fix their public reputations before they go to federal trial. So we're going to talk about that toward the end of the show. And then in hour two, we'll continue our look at some of those folks, but also want to take a look at what's happening in the state of Idaho with respect to marijuana legalization. I got the opportunity to speak with the news media in eastern Idaho. That got some airtime. We'll play that for you in hour two. And also I'll give you an update on what's happening with the access to marijuana, the legalization efforts that we're doing here in the state of Idaho. And then at the end of hour two, I've got a chance to get my debunking skills back to work. I was forwarded this missive from the deputy drug czar focusing on Oregon's Measure 110. Now, that's the measure that decriminalizes the personal use amounts of drugs. They're currently decriminalized in the state of Oregon. He, of course, thinks that's a terrible idea. I just go through him point by point, and I'll tell you exactly why. It's a fantastic idea to decriminalize not just marijuana, but all drugs. What people do to themselves in the pursuit of happiness is not a crime. Now, if they commit crimes, that's a different story, whether they're sober or not. So we're going to take a break. Coming right up after this break, we've got the Cannabis Headline News. Thank you so much for supporting the Russ Belville Show. Got new supporters out there on Patreon. Want to give a shout out to Blind and Baked. That's one of my favorite handles there, Blind and Baked. And it turns out that I've had a lot of people following me in my podcasting career from the blind community, people that are visually impaired. Makes a lot of sense. And they were early adopters of podcasting long before everybody knew what the hell it was. Wasn't for guys like Blind and Baked, I wouldn't be on the air today. So thank you so much. Stay tuned, the news is next. This is your Cannabis Headline News, brought to you every weekday by Radical Russ Radio at radicalruss.com, your 24-hour source for marijuana music and cannabis conversations. Subscribe today for just $4.20 at patreon.com/radicalruss. With your Cannabis Headline News for the week ending Friday, January 8th, 2021, I'm Russ Belville. American democracy was attacked Wednesday as supporters of Donald Trump, encouraged by him and his personal attorney, stormed the United States Congress as it officially tallied the Electoral College votes that declared Joe Biden the next president. Live footage of the insurrection showed Capitol Police allowing the flood of seditious traitors to breach barriers and doors, causing the House and Senate to go on lockdown as Secret Service hurried elected officials to safety. The domestic enemies of the Constitution then ransacked the Capitol, proudly carrying flags of white supremacy and the traitorous Confederacy, before police calmly let all but 50 of them simply walk away without arrest. Congress returned to count the electoral votes once order was restored. Objections by anti-democracy Republicans were heard and rejected, culminating in the official recognition of Joe Biden's landslide presidential win. Earlier in the day, Democrats won the 2 Georgia Senate races that gives them full control of the U.S. government, a promising development for the likelihood of federal descheduling and marijuana banking laws passing in 2021. Democratic challengers Jon Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock have won their elections to the U.S. Senate. As of press time, with 98% of the vote tallied in Georgia, Reverend Raphael Warnock leads incumbent Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler by over 53,000 votes. CNN has declared him the victor with 50.6% of the vote. Warnock now becomes just the 11th black senator and the first from Georgia. Incumbent Republican Senator David Perdue is trailing challenger Jon Ossoff by a little over 16,000 votes. Ossoff leads with just 50.2% of the vote, leading him to declare victory. New York lawmakers representing nearly a third of the state Senate on Tuesday pre-filed a bill to legalize marijuana, according to Marijuana Moment. Democratic Senator Liz Krueger and 18 co-sponsors filed the legislation, which is identical to a bill she sponsored last year and has now been referred to the Senate Finance Committee. It would make it so adults 21 and older would be able to purchase cannabis and cultivate up to 6 plants for personal use. This is the 5th version of the legalization bill that the senator has introduced since 2013. But advocates are hopeful that, given the evolved marijuana policy landscape in the region and nationally, as well as the governor's embrace of reform, this year will see the measure advance. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo spoke at a press conference about legalizing marijuana in the Empire State this year.
And then recreational marijuana, I think this should have been passed years ago. I think too many people have been imprisoned and incarcerated and punished. Too many of those people are Black, Latino, and poor. It's exaggerated the injustice of the justice system. So I've supported it for years. I've tried to pass it. But this is a year where we do need the funding, and a lot of New Yorkers are struggling. So I think this year will give us the momentum to get it over the goal line.
Cuomo also noted that New York is increasingly surrounded by legalization states.
And again, marijuana, as everyone knows, Massachusetts has legalized marijuana. New Jersey is going to legalize marijuana. So what are we really talking about at this point?
Marijuana Moment reports that lawmakers in Rhode Island kicked off their 2021 session with a plea from Senate President Dominic Ruggerio.
Additionally, I have asked Majority Leader Michael McCaffrey and Chairman Josh Miller to work together to develop a framework to legalize and regulate recreational marijuana.
On the House side, Representative Karen Alzate told ABC6 that passing legalization is almost a sure thing this year.
I would say that we have maybe I'm being optimistic, like a good 95% chance.
Governor Gina Raimondo has been pushing for a first-in-the-nation program consisting of state-run marijuana dispensaries, but Ruggerio told WPRI 12 he disagrees with that idea.
I don't think the state should be in that type of business. I think that should be a private concern, very similar to Massachusetts, to what Massachusetts is doing.
Raimondo has been tapped by President-elect Joe Biden to become the nation's Commerce Secretary. In neighboring Connecticut, Governor Ned Lamont reiterated his pledge to legalize marijuana in his State of the State address.
I am working with our neighboring states and look forward to working with our tribal partners on a path forward to modernize gaming in our state and working with the legislature on legalization of marijuana. Sports betting, internet gaming, legalized marijuana, they're all happening all around us. Let's not surrender these opportunities to out-of-state markets, or even worse, to underground markets.
If the effort to pass legalization through the state legislature fails to gain traction, House Speaker Matt Ritter says he will attempt to put a constitutional question on the state's 2022 ballot that would leave the matter to voters. The issue polls at over 63% support among Connecticut voters. Marijuana Moment reports that New Jersey lawmakers plan to send Governor Phil Murphy a marijuana cleanup bill to address a number of his remaining policy concerns around cannabis, including how the state would deal with people under 21 caught with the drug. The legislation, which both chambers are expected to take up in the coming week, is believed to be a final step in securing Murphy's approval as the state scrambles to establish a regulatory framework for legal marijuana. More than two-thirds of state voters approved legalization at the ballot box in November. Under the new bill, A 5211, people between the ages of 18 and 20 would be subject to a $250 civil fine for possession of up to an ounce of marijuana, regardless of whether the cannabis was obtained through a licensed store or an illegal dealer. Possessing between 1 and 6 ounces would carry a $500 fine. People under 18, meanwhile, would not be fined, but would instead be sent to juvenile justice court. Meanwhile, down the coast in Virginia, Democratic delegate Steve Heretic is introducing a bill to legalize marijuana.
Let's at least make it safe, let's make it predictable, let's regulate it, and let's benefit from it.
Heretic's bill would tax recreational marijuana at 9.7% and allow localities to add up to 5.3% of their own taxes.
I think it's time for Virginia to take a very mature, disciplined approach to analyzing what marijuana policy should be for consenting adults.
Heretic's bill also allows localities to ban marijuana businesses and maintains penalties for unlicensed sales.
For those who want to continue to manufacture and sell marijuana illegally, that is without a license, there is still a crime attached to that.
Minnesota House Majority Leader Ryan Winkler, a Democrat, told WCCO-TV that he is again filing a bill to legalize marijuana.
We want to create a safe, regulated marketplace where people can buy cannabis, know what they're getting.
But legalization will be a tough sell in the GOP Senate, which has historically resisted cannabis reform.
And the big hurdle is not really trying to convince people that cannabis is good. Nobody's going to say that. What we're saying is the current system fails every test of a good public response to a drug that has some adverse effects and has some positive benefit.
If Winkler can't get the Senate to go along for passing legalization in 2021, he hopes they'll be amenable to putting it before the voters, as New Jersey did, in 2022.
I think if they were, for example, to agree that we could put this on the ballot in 2022, I think it would pass overwhelmingly.
The legalization of marijuana this election in the state of South Dakota means Iowa is now sandwiched between a legal state to the west and Illinois, a legal state to the east.
I don't want our law enforcement to be, taxed with the responsibility of sitting at the bridge and waiting for people to come back. And I don't want to see Iowa money leave the state and go to another state. That's Iowa State Senator Jackie Smith, who represents Sioux City on the border with South Dakota. She was part of a Zoom roundtable of Iowa lawmakers discussing legalization. Lynn County Supervisor Stacy Walker touted the economic benefits.
We could introduce a new and sustainable market for our farmers.
Blackhawk County Supervisor Chris Schwartz explained how a marijuana arrest destroys economic and educational opportunities.
All of this happens disproportionately to Black and brown individuals, making it a large part of the institutionalized racism that we must dismantle in our state.
Officials in Illinois are reporting that in its first year of operation, the state's recreational marijuana program has sold over $1 billion in marijuana products to adults. That $1 billion figure does not include data for medical sales from December, according to Marijuana Moment. The sales figures are resulting in a much-needed windfall for state programs. In October, officials announced that the state had so far collected more than $100 million in revenue from cannabis sales since the market opened. Governor J.B. Pritzker also recently announced more than 500,000 expungements and pardons for people with low-level marijuana offenses on their records. Mass Live reports that for the fiscal year ending June 2020, Massachusetts cities and towns earned $14.9 million in tax revenue from marijuana sales. That is up from $2.9 million from the prior fiscal year. In Massachusetts communities, the tax on recreational marijuana can add up to 20%, a 6.25% sales tax, a 10.75% excise tax, and a local option tax for cities and towns of up to 3%. Communities also impose impact fees not only on marijuana retailers, but also on growing and processing facilities. As of the end of October, Massachusetts' 80 operating marijuana retailers topped $1 billion in total gross sales, according to the state's Cannabis Control Commission. The milestone was reached 2 years after the first 2 pot shops opened in November 2018. They were the first legal recreational marijuana shops on the East Coast. Missouri Representative Shamed Dogan, a Republican, pre-filed a measure to amend the state's constitution to legalize recreational cannabis, according to St. Louis Public Radio. Dogan said he is the first in the majority party to file a recreational cannabis bill. While the House has taken up proposals in past sessions, the Senate has been reluctant to do so. Dogan said he is confident his proposal will get the traction it needs to make it to the floors of both chambers for discussion. Dogan said, quote, 10% of the total arrests in the state of Missouri in 2018 were for marijuana possession. Just by tackling that, that's going to address a lot of those racial disparities, end quote. What is different about this bill, though, is the lack of state regulation when it comes to who can grow cannabis and sell marijuana. Dogan said that was intentional, saying, quote, I don't think we need a huge bureaucracy to pick winners and losers in terms of who gets licenses, end quote. The proposal taxes marijuana at 12%, mandates that it be properly tested and labeled, and would not allow adults to use cannabis in public spaces. Texas Tribune reports that lawmakers have filed at least 7 bills seeking to turn the Lone Star State's limited low-THC CBD oil law into a full-fledged medical marijuana program. With neighboring states like Oklahoma, Louisiana, and New Mexico creating thriving medical marijuana programs, and the federal legalization of hemp oil with less than 0.3% THC, pressure is now building to eliminate the cap on THC and add chronic pain and PTSD as qualifying conditions. Just 3,519 Texans are registered with the state to use medical marijuana, compared to 365,464 people enrolled in Oklahoma's program to the north. Advocates say 2 million Texans are eligible based on current law, but its costs and restrictions keep patients from participating. In an interview with Kentucky PBS station KET, lawmakers discussed the potential for passing medical marijuana legislation this year.
Well, I think I've been pretty clear that I truly believe that there is some medicinal or therapeutic value to THC.
That's Kentucky Republican Senate President Robert Stivers II, who also expressed reservations at the governor's suggestion that medical marijuana be heavily taxed.
To think of this as a money generator, to tax it, if you're truly saying it is medicinal or therapeutic, is totally wrong.
Democratic Senate Minority Floor Leader Morgan McGarvey agreed with his Republican counterpart.
We do not tax medicine in this state. It's inhumane to tax medicine. To open that debate, we would have to open the debate about taxing pharmaceuticals completely.
A poll from last February found that 9 out of 10 Kentuckians supported legalizing medical marijuana, and nearly 6 in 10, or 59%, felt cannabis should be legal, quote, under any circumstances, end quote. The law that allows for the medical use of marijuana in New Mexico even applies to people who are incarcerated, according to a ruling from District Court Judge Lucy Solomon. Marijuana Moment reports that New Mexico's medical cannabis law broadly protects registered patients, and those protections extend to people serving times in jails or prisons, according to the ruling. The correctional facility, quote, shall comply with the Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act and shall not penalize persons in custody or under the supervision of the Metropolitan Detention Center, including those in the Community Custody Program, for conduct allowed under the Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act, end quote, Judge Solomon wrote on Tuesday. That's consistent with an amendment to the state's medical marijuana law that was approved last year. It stipulates that a, quote, person who is serving a period of probation or parole or who is in custody or under the supervision of the state or local government pending trial as part of a community supervision program shall not be penalized for conduct allowed under the Lynn and Aaron Compassionate Use Act, end quote. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for the week ending Friday, January 8th, 2021. I'm Russ Belville. Cannabis Headline News is heard at the top of every hour on Radical Russ Radio, and Friday's news is contained within the free Russ Belville Show live podcast. For daily downloads of Cannabis Headline News podcast to your device every morning, subscribe by becoming a patron. All right, well, that sound means that it's 4:20 here in the Mountain Time Zone. Yes, we are live on YouTube. We've got the stream rebooted. If you want to check us out there, got a nice little chat room going as well with Lisa Kunze, Storyteller Kitty Time in the house. I also saw Stone Kidney out there as well. Nice to see a lot of the old friends. We'll be right back with some ranting right after this. The Coffee Pod in Sumter, Oregon is your fast, friendly marijuana shop nestled in the beautiful Elkhorn Mountain Range outside of Baker City. We're serving Eastern Oregon and Idaho's Treasure Valley with the selection of flower, pre-rolls, vapes, dab, and edibles you need at the prices that make it well worth the drive. Don't venture to some well-watched parking lot in some border town dispensary just to take a number and wait in a long line for your cannabis products. Make the drive to the Coffee Pot in Sumter and deal one-on-one with your bud tender with no waiting. See, feel, and smell the products you're after and make your purchase knowing your tax dollars are helping a small tourist community that needs it. Plus, every dollar you spend is a point toward our Bong Bucks program that earns you coupons on glass and accessories. The Coffee Pot also honors our military, seniors, teachers, and first responders with a 10% discount. And as always, OMMP patients pay no 20% tax. Come on up to the Coffee Pot in Sumter, the first business on the left, on the side of the 2-story log cabin restaurant, and tell them Radical Russ sent ya. Coming this fall on Fox.
Season 4 is full of surprises.
From the people who brought you The Masked Singer.
Are you following me, Nick?
No. And the new hit follow-up show, The Masked Dancer.
Make no mistake, you can dance.
Comes the newest show to combine America's love of guessing who's behind a mask.
I told you I had a feeling about this one.
And America's favorite legal drug.
You have some swag.
Tune in Fridays at 4:20 for The Masked Stoner.
Who are you?
Only on Fox. Hey, celebrities, just kidding. It's legal now. You don't have to hide it anymore. Radical Russ here, reminding you that marijuana legalization doesn't just happen. Smart, dedicated activists have put their freedom and future on the line to make it happen. Like the activists at the National Cannabis Industry Association. For over a decade, NCIA has fought for the improvement of regulations concerning the commercial side of medical and recreational marijuana. NCIA also works to bring together marijuana entrepreneurs for education and networking. Get involved by visiting thecannabisindustry.org. And keep it here on Radical Russ Radio for conversations with leaders from this organization, the best marijuana music, and the latest news about cannabis.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant. Today's Radical Rant is not at all going to be about marijuana, but it's going to be very much about those gentlemen you just heard speaking in the introduction. The presidents of the United States, some of whom I vehemently disagreed with, like George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush or Ronald Reagan, some of whom were demonstrable criminals. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush. The list goes on. I don't want to get so political about it in that respect. My point to be made here is the fact that even though they were presidents of the other party, Republicans, many of whom, and even Bill Clinton for that matter, who ramped up the drug war, who did terrible things, I still respected them as presidents because I have a deep and abiding love of this country and this Constitution. This week, we've heard a whole lot of people saying things, oh, this is not who we are. No, this is very much who we are. The proper thing to be saying is this is not who we aspire to be. Because that's what this country is all about, forming a more perfect union. Not that we're perfect at the moment by any stretch of the imagination, nor have we ever been. Make America great again. Can you point to the time when America was greater? When we had slavery, or women couldn't vote, or we were committing genocide, or wiping out native species? No, we continue to strive to become greater, and that's why I can broker no line, I can accept no amount of acceptance of this act, this unspeakable act that went down on, of all days, my younger brother's 50th birthday. I watched on January 6th, 2021, as armed mobs, incited by the president himself, stormed the Capitol building. I've been in that Capitol building. I've been in that rotunda. I've been in some of those members' offices. I remember how much security I had to go through to be able to be in there. And it was just offensive on so many levels and scary. And it's something that those of us, a lot of us in the Pacific Northwest have been warning about for years, about this rise of right-wing, white nationalist, Christian identity, dominionist terrorism that is brewing in this country. These talks of civil war, the Civil War in America is not going to be, the Union and the Confederates and their blue and their gray coats lining up for grand battles that'll be, reimagined and reenacted, hundreds of years from now. No, that's not the way this Civil War is going to go down. This is going to go down think more like the IRA bombings. The Protestants and the Catholics over Northern Ireland in the UK in the 70s, where there was bombings and snipers and terrorism going on. That's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at the face of right now in America. Egged on by none other than the president himself, the person who occupies the presidency, a mobbed up criminal in hock to Russia, Donald Trump. And I know, look, I've been in marijuana law reform for 15 years going on now, 16. And I've worked with Republicans, people beside me that are, libertarians, Republicans. I've worked with Greens and liberals and Democrats, people from all over the political spectrum. That might be one advantage we have as marijuana people, is we know a lot of diverse people. Prohibition kind of forced us into closets with a lot of people that we otherwise wouldn't have known. But I got to draw a line on this shit. When you've got the president of the United States inciting people.
These people are not going to take it any longer. They're not going to take it any longer.
How are we supposed to interpret that? He openly called for Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. He invited one in the White House in advance of this happening. Who knows if that was involved to plan. He told everybody to show up in Washington, D.C. on the day that the ballots would be counted, the electoral ballots would be counted. That would be the final nail in his coffin as far as occupying the White House, as certifying his electoral landslide for Joe Biden. Calls for them to all show up in D.C., goes to this rally where he's saying these things.
It would be really great if we could be covered fairly by the media. The media is the biggest problem we have as far as I'm concerned. Single biggest problem.
More of that enemy of the people crap, and the next thing you know, you see video of them attacking reporters and smashing cameras.
We beat them 4 years ago. We surprised them. We took them by surprise. And this year, they rigged an election. They rigged it like they've never rigged an election before. And by the way, last night they didn't do a bad job either, if you notice.
Of course, referring to the Senate election that got the Democrats the control of the Senate. We are at a point now where we don't have two political parties fighting within a democracy. We have one party committed to democracy and the other party committed to the rule of Trump, the rule of the mob, the rule of white makes right. That's what's going on right now. I was glad to see Lisa Murkowski, the Republican senator from Alaska, come out and say that Trump needs to resign. And if this party's going to be the Trump party, then I don't know if I can be a Republican anymore. That's exactly what we need to be hearing more of. And this idea, I'm hearing this in the media now of, well, don't impeach him now. That'll just rile up his supporters. These motherfuckers set up a gallows on the steps of the Capitol building. It was a scene right out of The Handmaid's Tale, for God's sake. There's too many people that think this is just, they're blowing off steam. Oh, gosh, just let them just work it all out. Gee whiz, there's only 12 more days left. It's so bad that the third person in line to the presidency, Nancy Pelosi, is talking to the Joint Chiefs of Staff of, hey, do you have any safeguards in place just so he can't, launch some nukes? That's how bad it's gotten. Twitter, Facebook, or at least Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, pulling his channels because it's too unsafe for him to tweet, but, nuclear codes. He should be impeached right now. The articles, Jamie Raskin, one of the representatives, already has the articles of impeachment written up. They should not be going home. They should be staying in the Congress right now, voting on these articles of impeachment, forwarding it to the Senate, and having these Republican traitors like Ted Cruz go on the record as to whether or not they support democracy or the rule of Trump, the rule of the mob, of white makes right. We know things can move quickly through the Senate if it's, putting a Supreme Court justice on the bench before Ruth Bader Ginsburg's body's even cold. We know it can move quickly. What are we waiting for? I hear Nancy Pelosi's talking about, we'll get around to voting on something Monday, that's for sure. Oh, yeah, let's give him a weekend because, Lord knows he wouldn't be stewing on the weekend. What are we expecting he's going to go play golf? Don't worry, he can't launch nukes from the golf course.
All of us here today do not want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats, which is what they're doing, and stolen by the fake news media. That's what they've done and what they're doing.
He gathers all these people. And I got to say, there's only one reason why the Capitol siege did not end in more deaths, not to mention possibly the assassinations or hostage taking of members of Congress the other day, Thursday. Was it yesterday? God, Wednesday. It's all blurred together for me. There's only one reason why there was not greater carnage, why there wasn't an assassination or a hostage taking at the U.S. Capitol on Wednesday, and that reason is because D.C. has strict gun laws. That's the only reason. If D.C. was a state like Idaho where you can open carry, anybody can concealed carry, guns, are welcome here, guns are welcome in the State House, that thing would have gone much worse than it went yesterday. Because D.C. has strict gun laws and you just can't be toting a gun around without drawing attention to yourself from law enforcement who will shut that shit down. It would have been mass bloodshed, I'm telling you. And now you're hearing all the stories, and we're going to talk about this in the next segment, of all these people who were a part of it, who just thought they were doing a little cosplay. Let's go have fun and support Trump, and yeehaw, we'll go storm the Capitol and take Nancy Pelosi's podium. Ha ha ha. They, first of all, deserve all the punishment possible. Punishment to the fullest extent of the law. Pretend they're black BLM protesters, right? Pretend they're protesting for cops not to kill them. And then whatever punishment you'd give for that, let's give that to those people. I'm fair-minded, right? But this notion that they're just blowing off steam or whatever. There are within these groups of people that, for every 10, 12 keyboard commandos out there that are just blowing off steam, that are just angry and posting on Parler or Facebook, there's a Timothy McVeigh in that group. There's a hardcore in that group who takes this shit seriously. We saw the pictures of him. We saw the guy in the black commando outfit with the zip tie handcuffs hopping over the seats in the House of Representatives. Had he been able to get in there 5 minutes sooner, I watched this go down live. Had our police forces and Secret Service not managed to get these representatives out of Congress or barricaded away from these people, there would have been hostage taking. There would have been deaths. And I know there's people in law enforcement and people in intelligence that take this seriously. And I follow some people on Twitter and Facebook, or Twitter, I should say. I don't do Facebook. But I follow some people on Twitter, Dave Newert, J.Y. Sexton, who have documented this, especially in the Pacific Northwest, that these white nationalists, Christian dominionists, are serious. When they say that they think Democrats are drinking the blood of infants and trafficking children for sex and harnessing them for their adrenochrome, people laugh at that as if we're talking about Xenu and the Scientologists or Joseph Smith and the Golden Plates. It is that level of fanaticism, but last I checked, Mormons didn't want to storm the Capitol and behead the Speaker of the House. Scientologists have done some pretty bad stuff as well, but I haven't seen them setting up gallows on the Capitol Hill steps. These people have a religious fervor. And a lot of these armchair liberal political folks think, oh, goody, we defeated Trump. Trump will be gone. Now we can get back to brunch. No, folks. This is a religion. Trump was but the vessel. And I grew up around a lot of these people, a lot of this religious thinking that there's a second coming, that there's an apocalypse coming, that there's going to be a great leader who rises up and blah-de-blah-de-blah. It doesn't respond to reason. That's why I cringe when I see Biden talking about, oh, we'll work with Republicans. No, do not work with these people. Ted Cruz, just hours before this went down, talked about how we had to fight and how we had to fight. All this combative rhetoric that they're now trying to walk back. Oh, well, goodness, when we say fight and be strong and show them and be strong and fight, well, we just mean that metaphorically, by golly. Yeah, just mean that metaphorically, by golly. This is what the President of the United States was telling people an hour before.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. You don't concede when there's theft involved. Our country has had enough. We will not take it anymore. And that's what this is all about.
Q Twisted Sister. We're not going to take it. They feel that they've been aggrieved. Donald Trump has succeeded beyond my wildest imagination at turning white people into an aggrieved minority who've managed to actually feel that they've been oppressed. And he is their savior. And they're willing to go to all sorts of lengths. We saw it unfolding in real time on Wednesday. And now these people trying to back out of it, realizing, oh my goodness, social media and people are going to find out what I did. And again, we're going to talk about that in the next segment of some of these people trying to whitewash what they've done. But let's make it absolutely clear. This was an attack, a domestic terrorism attack by right-wing Christian nationalists white nationalists. And you can look at all the pictures and it's like, where's Waldo? Let's find someone whose skin tone is a little bit darker than eggshell. There's a few. There always are. There are some. But overwhelmingly, this is a white movement. And white people, my fellow white folks, we need to start taking responsibility for that and recognizing, hey, where are they getting radicalized? What is it about their religion that leads them to these kind of violent upheavals? They're living in a complete fantasy world, people.
And to use a favorite term that all of you people really came up with, we will stop the steal.
They really believe this. They really believe the election has been stolen. Trump went into a long tirade about why this is true.
We will not let them silence your voices. We're not going to let it happen. Not going to let it happen.
Fight for Trump. Fight for Trump.
Thank you.
And fight for Trump. These people were ready for a fight. And he tells them, we're going to go march down to the Capitol. We'll be right with you. We're going to stop the steal. He went into a long discussion. I listened to this thing today, the whole speech. I'd watched it live too when it happened. I re-listened to it to get these clips. And he went on this long explanatory tirade of how he got 62 million votes, and that if in 2016, and that if he got 65 million in 2020, then he'd be guaranteed to win. And he got 72 million or whatever. And so then how could he possibly have lost? And there's no way Joe Biden got 80 million votes. There's no way. He's pathologically incapable of accepting that he's lost. He's a malignant narcissist. And it's just been the shame of the entire 4-year tenure and the years before that, trust washing. I learned this word the other day, trust washing his reputation by putting him on The Apprentice to show that he's some sort of magic businessman when he's been nothing but a trust fund failure his entire life. He's lost money in everything he's ever done. Laundering his reputation as to not being in hoc to the Russian mob. For this entire span it's been going on, anybody with even a Psych 101 understanding of psychology could tell you this man was not fit for the presidency. And oh, how bad could it get? And boy, I remember in 2016, yeah, but Hillary will start World War III. Yeah, but Hillary will... Really, I just want to... I wish we could invent time travel, if only to go back to that period in 2015 and just show them a loop of 1 minute compilation, if you will, of what's happened just in the past 4 years. That there's the picture going through social media where it shows the before and after. The before, during the Trump inauguration, there's the Capitol with the red, white, and blue bunting and the crowds and the guardrails. And then the after picture and the tear gas and the Trump flags and people hanging off of the buildings and breaking the windows. And all the people who back in 2016 told you that this would be bad, me included. Because remember, I was pretty anti-Hillary at the beginning. I was really anti-Hillary. Did not like Hillary Clinton. I was telling people not to support her. And then I had a few of my friends who, let's say, are different than I, kind of bang it into my head that, hey, bro, it may not be so bad for you. What do you think it'll happen to your Muslim friends? Oh, they'll be banned from traveling. What do you think will happen to immigrant friends? Oh, their families will be separated at the border and their children put in cages. Oh, what will happen to the Supreme Court? You'll lose 3 seats. Oh. So I was really anti-Hillary until people started making it clear to me how bad Donald Trump could be. And you know what? They didn't even come close to expressing how bad it is. We've got going to have 500,000 people dead from this pandemic. How bad could it be? What do you got to lose? All right, we're going to talk about the keyboard commandos learning the hard way that, sedition has consequences when we return. Hi, I'm Radical Russ Belville. You know me. I'm from Idaho, where we've got 2 strains of marijuana, got some and don't. But until I can help legalize marijuana in the Gem State, I can still bring you the best the hemp plant has to offer at Boise Hemp World. Boise Hemp World features the Mama Duck line of CBD tinctures and pain creams and the Billy Dogs line of CBD pet tinctures and dog treats. Hemp World also features CBD candy, gummies, gum, spices, and a whole assortment of tie-dye and hemp clothing and accessories. And under the laws of America's last absolute prohibition state, all Hemp World CBD products are 100% THC free, so you won't fail any drug screenings. Boise Hemp World, now with 2 locations, our flagship store at 6928 West State Street in the Glenwood Shopping Center, and our new location at 1720 West State Street in the Albertson Shopping Center. We're also the headquarters for the Idaho Cannabis Coalition's campaign to legalize medical marijuana in 2022. Find us online at boisehempworld.com or call us toll-free at 844-IDA-HEMP and tell them Radical Russ sent you.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show.
The war on crime and drugs did not fail. It was a rousing success.
Okay, maybe you're high too.
And now, Puff Pass Ponder with Radical Russ. If Idaho keeps hemp illegal because it looks like marijuana, then how come powdered sugar is still legal? This has been Puff Pass Ponder with Radical Russ. The I Am Cannabis Sativa podcast is now replaying on Radical Russ Radio. Join host Dan Scotland for a review of the news and events in the cannabis community with frequent updates throughout the week. Visit IamCannabisSativa.com to subscribe and check RadicalRuss.com/schedule for show replay times. You're listening to Radical Russ Radio because you believe in facts, science, reason, logic, compassion, and nature. Welcome back to the broadcast. 48 after the hour here in the Mountain Time. Actually, it's 48 after the hour everywhere. I crack myself up. But let's get serious again because I want to talk about the keyboard commandos, the screen berets, the people you find online all the time in those, sometimes your Facebook feeds or elsewhere, sometimes at your Thanksgiving dinner, your own family, in real life, who are on the Trump train, who are wedded to this idea, this fiction, this entirely false reality of Dominion voting systems and innards that are taken out of the machines and dumps of ballots, or as we like to call them, counting the ballots of people in the cities. These ideas that voting by mail is somehow terribly fraudulent, when we've got a number of states, I think it's 5 states now, that vote entirely by mail. It's incredibly secure. I've been doing it when I lived in Oregon for years. So they're living in this false reality. They have an entire, it's a cult, it's a religion built around this idea that they are the real Americans. And folks, there's nothing better to call it than Confederacy. They are the descendants of the Confederates, if not in blood, then in ideology. They believe they are real Americans. They inherently distrust the cities. To them, the cities are where those people live. And fill in those for whatever. Liberals, leftists, progressives, Antifas, blacks, browns, whatever. Those people live there. their opinions aren't valid because they're city folks. They're not real Americans with real American heartland values. Well, let's talk about these real American heartland values. A story come across my desk here from the Idaho papers of this guy who's indelibly infamous. You've seen the picture. It's from the House of Representatives. Guy clad in black with a backpack and a black helmet and black gloves that might be black fighting gloves. They look like they've got the reinforced knuckles there. But anyway, who's dangling off of the balcony of the House of Representatives by the doorway to drop down. And later, in another photo that's famous, you see him. He's taking his helmet off, but he's sitting in the presiding officer's chair of the House of Representatives. You've seen this guy. The photos went viral. The guy's name is Hosea Colt, and he is from Boise, Idaho. And this is what he had to say shortly after he was ransacking the Capitol.
For pissed. I just got in the Capitol building. I was the first one. I hopped down into the chamber, and I was the first one to sit. And Nancy Pelosi, that bitch, she's a traitor. She's treasonous. But I said
the misogyny, first of all, but also how in the world is she treasonous or traitorous? Still, Hosea Colt, that was his Instagram right after he's running out of the Capitol, right? A little bit later now, the Instagram kind of like does a glitch, like it's been paused and then restarted again after he moved a little farther, but he goes on.
Like, I'm sitting here and I don't know what to do. Like, you know, I'm in downtown DC. I'm all over the news now. But like, I'm just like every single one of those people that was marching, like a peaceful protest, came here to represent America, we're tired of being lied to. We're tired of people stealing, you know, from us, stealing our freedom, stealing our liberties.
What?
And, you know, I didn't hurt anybody in there. Like, yeah, I did sit in Nancy Pelosi's seat. Like, she shouldn't be there. She doesn't represent.
What? Again, what freedoms and liberties have been taken from you, white guy from Boise? What? She doesn't deserve to be sitting there? What? She won her election, and then she was nominated and elected as speaker according to the Constitution you claim to love so much. That's the thing that bothers me about this. Like, I got my disagreements with Nancy Pelosi, but I don't claim any problem with the legitimacy of her being there. These people hate the Constitution. They hate law and order. They hate the rule of law. But you can tell the difference in those two clips. The one coming right out, yeah, I got in the Capitol. I sat down in her chair, that bitch. And then, however much longer, oh my gosh, it's starting to sink in. Good golly, there might be consequences. So the story comes across my desk, and then I see he's lawyered up. He's deleted his Instagram and his Twitter. He's deleted all his social media profiles. Gone into full turtle mode here and lawyered up and released this statement where he said, quote, "While in the chamber, I told the other protesters that this is a sacred place and not to do any damage. Some of them wanted to trash the place and steal stuff, but I told them not to and to leave everything in its place. We're still on sacred ground." Sacred ground. I'm looking at a picture of you in climbing gear and a helmet dangling right over the entry of the House of Representatives, right on the seal, our motto, one of our mottos of the United States, Annuit Coeptus, Latin for looks favorably upon our undertakings. That's sacred. Well, I made sure to wear the good gloves because, you know, we are ransacking a sacred place. He continues, quote, "I sincerely apologize to the American people. I recognize my actions that have brought shame upon my family, myself, my friends, and my beautiful country. In the moment, I thought I was doing the right thing." Guy's freaking dangling from the balcony of the House of Representatives that he was able to breach by joining an armed mob that were breaking windows and in the process of killing a police officer. I thought I was doing the right thing. I realize now that my actions were inappropriate, and I beg for forgiveness from America and my home state of Idaho. My intention wasn't to put a stain on our great country's democratic process, end quote. No, I'm sorry, Mr. Hosea Colt of Boise, Idaho. You have put a stain on this country's democratic process. You are a part of breaking a historic streak for world democracies when it comes to a peaceful transfer of power. Hosea Colt. Name and shame him. Hosea Colt. These self-styled patriots, these big tough guy macho drive a big truck, I got a lot of guns patriots who don't know the first goddamn thing about the Constitution, couldn't name an amendment outside the second, and couldn't even recite it fully. They'd probably forget the first half. Leading an insurrection, a riot at the Capitol, and you thought you were doing the right thing. No, the right thing to do is to win elections. You know who a patriot is in this country? Stacey fucking Abrams is a patriot in this country. Gets an election legitimately stolen from her. Not your fantasies. Not your fantasies about Dominion voting systems and late night dumps. No, legitimately stolen through her through the time-honored GOP tactics of voter suppression and purging people from the rolls and only having a few polls open in the black parts of town. She gets an election legitimately stolen from her, and what does she come back to do? Oh, I'll show you how democracy works, motherfucker. I'll register a whole hundreds, thousands of people. I'll get people to the polls. I'll be pestering them so much. You'll see turnout like you have never seen before. And I'll take both those Senate seats. Thank you very much. You could hear it in Trump's talk when he's talking about at the Save America rally. He was bringing up name-checking Stacey Abrams a number of times. Because they're afraid of her. They're afraid of true patriots like that who know that the genius of America is in getting more voices to the polls. You want to be patriots, MAGA? You really want to make America great again? Come up with some policies for doing so. You had control of the country for the past 6 years, or past 2 years, or the first 2 years with Trump. You had control of the country, and what did you get accomplished? Tax cuts for billionaires. Not health care, not infrastructure week, not even building your goddamn wall. Got nothing. You want to be patriots instead of whining about how, oh my gosh, if the Electoral College is taken away, Republicans will never win an election again. Hey, how about figuring out how to win elections that don't involve cheating, that don't involve voter suppression, that don't involve gerrymandering a district so that cretins like Jim Jordan and Devin Nunes and whatever the latest Ropert and QAnon weirdo wackos that get in, who know they're safe, who know that they can sign on to backing a coup and face no electoral repercussions because they've been gerrymandered into a district full of batshit crazies. You want to do something? How about coming up with a vision for the Republican Party, a conservative vision based on faith and values, sure, whatever, that convinces people to vote for you, that convinces black people to vote for you, and white people, and Mexican people, and gay people, and find a way to win their votes. Believe me, it could be done. There's a lot of us on the left side, the people that are voting on the blue side, that we're not really super happy with the choices we get on the blue side, but we have to vote because the other side is literal Nazis. Literal Nazis. It could be done. I've met some of you. I've got Republican friends in drug reform. A number of them that are really nice people. We think differently on how government should be structured and how people should be supported, but they're still wonderful people who love this country. Let's have some more of those. And let's once and for all purge Nazis from our country. I got more to say. There are plenty more of these, included elected officials and law enforcement among the insurrectionists. We got their audio coming up next, but that's it for the hour one. Thanks for joining us. I'm Radical Russ. Welcome back, YouTube. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
Until you see, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.